All right, welcome everybody. This is Sang Lucci TV. I'm here with Ezra at HFT Bonds Trader, actually at HF Bonds Trader. He's over there at the Sang Lucci offices out there in New York. What's going on, Ezra, man? What's going on? How you doing, man?
Doing great, dude. Glad to be here.
Nice, nice. So what we're going to talk about today, guys, is cybersecurity. We're going to have some fun with this, you know. I just want to preface everything, though, by saying that we are not experts, in the field of hacking and all that kind of stuff. However, Ezra does design programs for a living, and he is a good resource here, when it comes to the sort of programming behind a lot of the hacking that we've seen recently here. Let's start off with an interesting thing that happened over the weekend. Was the iCloud was hacked, and a lot of these pictures from these celebrities were taken and posted up on a website. They're saying, there's a lot of people that have come out and speculating what happened, how they actually got in there, and this was something that I kind of wanted to ask. This was allegedly, right? And this was something that I wanted to ask you here. They're saying it was basically there was a Find My iPhone service, right? And this was placed, I guess, via the cloud. You can locate lost or stolen phones, and that's how they got the usernames. And then they used that brute force attack or whatever to just do tons of different passwords until they found your password, and bam, they got into the phone. And then your storage space supposedly on the cloud. What's your experience and knowledge here with this brute force thing? How intellectual or how advanced are the programs that, run these algorithms to figure out your passwords and usernames and things like that? What's your experience in that world, bro?
So basically, the password cracker's dream is being able to get a set of, passwords or encrypted, whatever, honeypot or a set of, data that it can then, test its password cracking against again and again. So usually what they do is they'll download a huge trove of user IDs and passwords. They're encrypted, and then they'll just spend, the next, 5 weeks trying to crack at them because they've got it, they've got their own little trove of encrypted passwords. Here it sounds like, Apple scaled their, Apple rolled out their login API or whatever to whatever this new Find My iPhone service. They didn't, simultaneously roll out all the security measures that would stop you after you try 3 attempts. It locks you out.
Right.
So now the hackers have basically this captive data set that they can just run their password crackers against. These, basically these pattern searchers, which just test. It's got a dictionary of all the English words. It's got run through all the numbers. So, goldenrod 1257 is going to get tested. All those things are going to get tested. September 25, all the birthdays, everything's going to get tested. They've got a couple of basic patterns, and now they're using the Find My iPhones data set, from what I hear, as they're just, they're just cracking against it.
Right, and you were saying like the sophistication of this and the repetition here, it might take them 5 weeks to get up in there, though, just by using that program, correct? Because all they're using is, what do they call it, permutations? They're just using the different adaptations of words and numbers here to figure out what your password is.
Correct. You can look online and see what the basic, patterns are that are executed, but it's very basic. It's,
So this is actually really interesting because when I was in the ticket game and I came across large sellers, large brokers who used programs to attack the Ticketmaster servers, to also attack the MLB servers. There was at one point where they could literally flood the servers with requests and be able to get as many tickets as they wanted, but then Ticketmaster and MLB upped their security. They finally upped their security, and then if you loaded the servers with too many requests, it would block your IP eventually or block your set of IPs or whatever it is. So that was the question I wanted to ask you, is that how much do these people think? I mean, if Apple, a maker of a lot of programs out there, if they're skipping on, let's say, a little security thing that they need to in a new service here, I mean, damn, isn't it, anytime these people roll out these new services or whatever, I mean, the potential is there for these major breaks in security, no?
Absolutely. As you see the proliferation of apps and ancillary apps and abilities, that are tied to Apple, that are tied to Android, whatever, as these, centralized companies that hold your passwords start, subcontracting or whatever, licensing these services to access their login, plugin, basically as that proliferates, there's an inherent, security potential for security lapses to propagate as well, and so it's really quite inevitable, and I'm glad this happened to Apple because now it's really going to be sort of a case study
Right.
in how to lock this down because it's only going to propagate more and more.
Right, right. And then my question to you is that, and this is actually, you know what? Let's bring it up after. But it's like the game between the hackers and those that are putting out these programs. I equate it similarly to what you and I do, in the sense that, or even companies like Facebook or whatever. I consider all of these companies and people as sort of hackers, right? But we're hackers in a good way, right? Because we're trying to hack data, we're trying to hack intelligence here to figure out a system where we can make money off of it, versus these other folks here who are hacking for the intent to steal information, steal data, and things like that. So it's kind of like that never-ending competition between the hacker and the guy who's putting out these programs here.
Yeah, there's this cat and mouse nature for sure.
Right.
And definitely, I mean, one specific to this case is I wouldn't say that this was because there was some super highly adaptable hacker who figured out a vulnerability.
Right.
In this case, I think that somebody dropped the ball in this case, and it's such a it's just so tightly carved up this security market that the minute you leave an opening, someone's going to drive a truck through it.
Dude, and I was gonna start talking about these exchanges, but you just brought up a great point here. Is that like how you got to think like how involved are these hackers that they're just waiting for that end? They're just waiting for the rollout of a new iOS platform or a new cloud update, and they're sitting there just pilfering. They're sitting there just watching it. What is it that triggers them? Like for me and you, it's an alert, right, to buy or sell a freaking stock, right? For these guys, I mean, are we talking about programs that are able to now detect the vulnerability, or are we still just talking about people sitting at their fucking computers for hours and hours and hours a day, like Bait with Jamie Foxx and that crazy guy who is just sitting there, trying to hit the NSA for information?
I'm going to hypothesize that basically what you've got is you've got some insiders, a certain amount of insiders who chat on forums because they like to be notoriety, whatever. And so the hackers are also in these forums, obviously, and the insiders are leaking things like, in the next version of iOS, there's this and this vulnerability. For an insider, it's very easy to know what the vulnerabilities are.
Right,
so,
right.
The insider might say, in the next version of iOS that's coming out in 6 months, we're using this and this technology. The hackers then sitting there licking their chops for the next 6 months,
right,
hoping that the next version of iOS does get launched with that technology and that vulnerability. When it does, they're going to test it, and they're going to be on it. And I think that's how it works, just like when the exchanges tell us there's a rule change coming, and then we spend the next 6 months waiting for that rule change.
Exactly.
In place to try and, work it.
Exactly. It's crazy how like these industries kind of commingle as far as just the mentality behind it, the mentality of how to adapt and stay relevant and continue making money in a industry that is just changing all the time. So it's kind of the similar thing with the internet here and hackers as well. So let's move on to the big topic of the day here, and that's, is it possible for them to hack exchanges? And if so, what could happen as a result? And I'm just going to bring a reference here from an article that I found about the CME. This was reported from Bloomberg at Matt Leasing, if anybody wants to find him on Twitter. Couple of guys out there in the Bloomberg space, they got some good articles out here, man. He said the CME group was hacked, and then some information was found through the block trading. So it was through a Clearport. So I believe this was a clearing firm that only did block trades. And then apparently they stole some information and things like that. But, you know, they didn't say they stole any assets or put on any trades or things like that. From your experience, from what we've seen out there, you know, what can be done here, I guess, with a breach of security at the exchange level?
It's very interesting, and you know, I know that Nanex and Eric Hunsitter have hypothesized that terrorists, you know, cyber attacks on the exchanges could derail the system. Basically, you know, you have to go through a serious vetting process to get any kind of direct market access, you know. And I think that people who gain that direct market access have these direct connections to the exchanges, and you know, I think that basically, for the most part, I think it'd be pretty obscure for, you know, people to actually directly attack an exchange, and the ability for the exchange to segregate and shut down an individual participant, you know, that's always available to them. But I would definitely, you know, I think that there is a reliance in the industry on the fact that we don't need to use that much security because we're so obscure. Like, who would attack my trading server in Chicago?
Right.
But, you know, at the same time, I think that you know, the regulators have lots of protocols in place, but I've seen nothing in terms of, you know, cybersecurity. And I think that, you know, I think that individual firms are more at risk than the system as a whole. But I think the risk is ignored.
Yeah, so that was kind of my next point. It's like, what's the governing body for specifically for our industry, right? For exchanges, what is it? Just individuals? Do the companies basically secure themselves and they're responsible for it, or is it somebody like the CFTC who comes in and governs the cybersecurity of these exchanges and clearing firms and all that kind of shit?
Well, it's FINRA that comes to us with algo trading protocols and best practices. And FINRA, you know, it's a self-regulatory SRO. You know, and we basically have to submit summaries of all of our algos, that kind of thing. And so I would imagine that it would be FINRA that would come to us asking us to make sure that our servers are secure. You know, I was very comfortable when I was trading at a shop where our trading machines had no internet connections. They had a direct line to our exchange servers, and that was it. But you couldn't load an internet. You couldn't load a web page on our trading machines. And, you know, I liked that. You know, we didn't have to worry about virus software. We didn't have firewalls. You know,
that's dope.
You know, yeah, exactly. Because
that's dope. We should actually look into that for you and me. Huh?
Oh yeah, that's exactly. No, don't worry. That's, you know, on the short list.
So okay. So what about the indirect approach? And I want to bring this up because this was huge. I believe it was 2013 that it happened. Do you remember when the Twitter hack on Associated Press happened? That talked about that White House attack. There was an attack on the White House. They hacked Associated Press. And what happened to the markets that day? It was like a 200-point drop in the Dow, right?
That's more what we have to worry about. Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the indirect approach, because there's a lot of ways to influence price, and then from the influence of price, you can make money off that price, or you can make money off that movement. But would that really be the smartest way to hack, right? Because that's the John Travolta Pelham 1, 2, 3 status, right? I mean, you sabotage this. What is it? They get a bunch of hostages, right? And then all of a sudden, gold shoots up through the roof, and you make some money on it. But isn't it easy to track that trade? Like, why would somebody want to indirectly attack, let's say, you know, Associated Press here to provide a market move that they can make money off of it? Wouldn't they get caught anyway pretty quickly after?
What if you're sitting in a basement in Russia, though? You know, like, you know, if you're an American, yeah, it might not be the best idea. But,
yeah.
You know, if you're some international dude and this is your one play, and you have, you know, a bunch of, you know, VIX calls or whatever, and you want to tweet about the suitcase nuke in Grand Central. You know, I think that's the real risk of manipulation of markets through news, and you know, I mean, it's got to be easier to hack Twitter than to hack the CFTC.
Indeed, and then obviously there's the physical hack, right? I mean, if you could physically get into, let's say you could physically get into server spaces, or let's say you could physically get into an exchange. There's things like that. Obviously, breaks from the inside, they seem more realistic to me. And as you
100%.
said, right, like the break from the inside, and then they also connect with other entities to create the desired effect. I mean, I think that would be the most plausible way that it would
Most
happen. No?
breaches occur from inside access, somebody placing a thumb drive, somebody getting physical access to a machine. That is the best way to get access. And usually it's something like, you insert a thumb drive that installs some software, and then it allows you external access. Like when the VA got hacked, I think they found it was because someone got a USB key into some machine somewhere on the network, and then that allowed Chinese, penetration from overseas.
I see.
It's very difficult to do a completely remote hack because most network administrators are smart enough not to make any network fully controllable from, an external IP. So.
Okay, so I mean, now that we threw out some scenarios out here, I mean, if you're out there, we're out there, we're talking to retail guys, right? We're talking to the retail world out there. We're talking to all our Twitter followers. And by the way, anybody who's just joining in, feel free to comment at Sang Lucci. If you guys have any questions or you guys want something that Ezra and I to toss around. But we're talking to all these people here. What is it that they should be worried about? What is it that they can do to, help them with their, let's say, private information or things like that? Should we start being worried about it, Ezra? I mean, me personally, I have a bad feeling on how this shit is going to go down, man. I feel like that catastrophic event is just around the bend, and it could really happen. So what would somebody like myself, who, let's say, is very paranoid or whatever, start doing to protect from X, Y, and Z catastrophic event where you wake up and there's zero money in your fucking bank account?
Okay. Basically, there are things you can do, and they are mostly behavioral. It's not coming up with a more secure password or more diverse passwords.
Okay.
I hate to break this to you, but your super hard to guess password with special characters is probably just as easy to crack as hello 123, whatever.
Yep.
So it's not a more secure password or more diverse password that's going to save you.
Before you continue, just what you said, like even when you're using the super passwords, like let's say I got digits, I got exclamation points, and I got letters and characters in like that. Are you saying that password hack sophistication is that good now that even when you have that kind of shit, it's not even a prevent? That's what you're saying. That's
what hackers are trying to do. What hackers usually they're working from some downloaded encrypted database.
Right.
And the minute they find the key for that hashing scheme,
right,
they're being able to decrypt the whole database. So
the
weakness isn't your password usually. The weakness is the weakest password in the database. Generally speaking, the weakest link. And also the security of the encryption and hashing that the third-party login provider is using that you can't really control.
So you just hit on something else. Before we get too much on tangents, I want to do one more. When you say the encrypted, all that data is encrypted, right? So let's say you got weakest link and you get in there and you have access to all this private data. You still have to decrypt it, right? So isn't that where the prevention is as far as security from the program to the actual hacker, right? I mean, isn't the encryption the fucking wall? Like, that's the last wall, no?
Should be. So basically, the hacker's going to download some big encrypted database of logins and user passwords, whatever. And so, he's going to start plugging away. The encryption of that database should be what protects you. But, given enough time and enough access, they might, as soon as they crack one user ID and password pair, in most schemes for password storage, then they can infer that the hashing scheme, which is the encryption for the whole database, and that opens up the database. So what you want to do is not just I hope that answers your question. There is
absolutely.
Basically, instead of developing a more secure password, although follow with the general password guidelines, you want to do things like make use of other authentication means. Like when they give you the extra ID on your phone, like if they send you a text message with a code that you can enter, if they offer you double authentication or biometric, authentication, that definitely makes it harder, and it makes you a less attractive target if they're going to decrypt the whole, database of names and users.
Okay. Okay. So you're saying, like, if there's an extra security question. So for example, like if there's 3 security questions that that would grant access or something like that. Like, what's your favorite pet, or what's your favorite blah 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 blah. Like, you're talking about different levels of security, basically.
Well, basically, some logins will let you, I think the iCloud has an option where they'll send you a token to your cell phone. And you enter those 4 digits each time you log in, or whatever. You enter those 4 digits into your login.
Right.
And then you have to be in physical possession of your cell phone to access your iCloud.
Yeah.
And that would prevent a hacker from accessing it. So
Gotcha.
double authentication methods.
Gotcha.
Like if you access your work computer, most corporations have an RSA token ID thing. It's a little dongle you carry on your keychain, and it changes every 10 seconds, the number, and you enter that. When you're accessing your work computer, anyone who works for a large corporation who accesses remotely has a little dongle. Those kinds of additional authentication methods. Sometimes your bank will give you a dongle on a keychain, depending, and those kinds of things. Extra authentication, that makes it much more difficult.
No doubt. So, I mean, before we close it up here, do you have any ideas of where this is going? I mean, do you have your own thoughts on, the intelligence here of the hacker community and where this eventually is going? Like, what's the peak? You know what I'm saying? What's the climb? There's always a climax to everything, right? So, what's going on in your head, man?
That's a great question. I think this the peak of this whole thing is when the banks start using the Bitcoin blockchain protocol.
All right.
that's a joke. But it's always going to be the same thing. There's never going to be perfect security. The same way before people could break into bank vaults, people could break into safes, people could break into your home. There are always going to be breaches of security, and the concept is just not to get lax, and to require the people you do business with to maintain high standards.
Cool, man. Cool. All right, guys. Well, you saw it here. You guys can check the recording there on YouTube. Ezra, thanks for joining, man, and I'll probably see you next Tuesday, man.
Anytime. I can't wait.
All right, brother.